ash and bone. The bombs fell before dawn. There was no warning, no broadcast, no declaration of war. Just fire. The skies over Kuros 7, a quiet agricultural colony at the edge of Earth's frontier, ignited in a cascade of white light. Moments later, the shockwaves tore through the village of Verdun Reach, flattening homes, silencing families, turning crops to ash. 17-year-old Wren Lasa was ripped from sleep by the sound of her mother screaming and the sky exploding. Before she could reach the door, her brother pulled her down into the bunker below the kitchen, a shelter built for storms, not orbital strikes. He slammed it shut just as the world above shattered. Then silence. Hours passed. Maybe days. The filtered air tasted like copper and dust. Wren lay in the dark beside her brother's body, crushed by falling debris, eyes wide open. The impact had taken him in an instant. Her fingers were numb, her mind blank, but some flicker of survival, or spite, kept her breathing. When she emerged, Verdun Reach was gone. What remained was a gray wasteland. Ash swirled through the wind where crops once grew. Homes were jagged skeletons of melted beams and scorched metal. The scent of burning flesh lingered. Birds didn't sing. The sky remained an ugly orange bruise. There were no survivors. Not in the village. Not in the surrounding outposts. Wren wandered for days. She drank from rain collection tanks, ate from sealed ration packs. She didn't cry. Not once. Something deeper had taken root, colder than grief, heavier than fear. On the fifth night, while scavenging near the old comm tower, she found it, a shattered Varkari recon drone, its core still humming faintly. She worked by instinct, using broken tools and a cracked data slate. She had always been good with machines. Her father called her his little calibrator. The drone's memory wasn't fully wiped. She pulled the last transmission log and stared at the flickering text, reading it over and over until the words seared into her. Target designation: Verdun Reach. Status: non-compliant colony. Orders: strategic purge authorized by Dominion High Council. Execution timestamp: 0417/local sector cycle. Non-compliant. A word used to erase lives. Verdun Reach wasn't a threat. It had no weapons, no soldiers. Just farmers. Children. Her sister Kayla, who dreamed of painting the cliffs. Her father, who played music on a rusted guitar every evening. Her mother, who tended a tiny herb garden behind their hut. All wiped away because someone, somewhere, labeled them non-compliant. Wren didn't scream. She didn't throw the drone. Instead, she sat in the ruins of her home, surrounded by scorched earth and silence, and began writing code. A week later, she was gone. She left no message, no trace, no grave. She smuggled herself aboard a salvager's freighter, blending into the shadows like a ghost. By the time it docked at the Varkari trade hub near the Koran Divide, she had already carved a new identity into the system. Her name was now Saren Vex, a Varkari hybrid techborn with clearance and credentials. The galaxy moved on. Earth Command issued a weak diplomatic protest. The Varkari Dominion denied wrongdoing. Verdun Reach became a footnote, collateral miscommunication, buried under bureaucracy and distance. But one person remembered. 6 years later, in the heart of the Dominion fleet, whispers spoke of a ghost in the machines. Sabotaged fuel cores. Crashed patrol ships. Exploding data relays. A technician whose face no one remembered. A shadow who knew their systems better than they did. They called her the Ember. None of them knew she had once stood barefoot in the ash of a dead village, reading the words that sentenced her family to death. None of them knew she had memorized the architecture of their planet-killer weapon. None of them knew she wasn't done. Fire beneath the skin. Wren Lasa was dead. That name, that life, had been burned away on the day Verdun Reach turned to ash. What walked among the Varkari Dominion now was Saren Vex, an elite systems technician born on a fabricated outpost, with credentials too clean to question and an implant signature stolen from a corpse she'd carved open in a freight bay. She spoke their language fluently, clipped, guttural, cold. She knew how to hold her eyes just right to mimic their downward gaze of superiority. She learned their culture, their ranks, their systems. She blended in so well that no one ever looked close enough to see the human rage simmering behind her synthetic lenses. Saren's Vex rose fast. In 6 years, she had clawed her way through the Varkari military-industrial complex. First as a maintenance tech, then a weapons integrator, then a classified AI handler aboard a war barge. She reprogrammed kill routines, upgraded drones with algorithms designed to subtly fail, corrupted power routing nodes with minuscule inconsistencies that wouldn't be noticed until it was too late. Sabotage disguised as excellence. Every success made her more trusted. Every new position brought her closer to her true goal. The Genesis Lance. The Varkari's planet killer. A weapon unlike any other. A titanic orbital platform armed with a core-powered stellar beam capable of rupturing planetary mantles. It hovered in low orbit above Varnix, the Varkari Homeworld, both a symbol of their supremacy and their paranoia. Only the highest levels of clearance could access its systems. So she earned it. She sold her soul to climb. Played politics. Set up rivals to fail. Smiled when commanders praised her efficiency. Nodded when they commended her loyalty. It was easy. They were so sure they'd won. So sure humanity was weak, broken, scattered. Let them believe it. One more step. One more kill. 2 days after her promotion to Systems Overseer, Lance Corps Alpha, she stood on the observation deck of the Genesis Lance. Varnix loomed below, vast, green, ancient. A planet rich with oceans and megaforests. Sprawling arcologies stretched like veins across its continents, each pulsing with the lifeblood of the Dominion. Their capital cities glistened in orbit light. Civilian cruisers drifted peacefully in the thermosphere. So many lives. So many families. She gripped the railing so hard her knuckles cracked. Her breath fogged the glass. Inside her head, the memory came uninvited. Kayla, her little sister, laughing barefoot in the garden. Her mother brushing ash from her father's shoulders as the bunker sealed. Her village hadn't even made it into the official reports. No significant losses. Saren turned away from the window and entered the secure chamber. Inside was the firing console, the core command matrix that routed targeting data into the Lance's reactor. Normally, only 3 overseers were authorized to input commands. But one had died last week in a malfunctioning airlock. Another suffered a cerebral seizure after a cybernetic overload. Only one remained. Her. She walked into the chamber and began the override sequence. A voice crackled through her neural interface. It was not Varkari. Override detected. Source, human cortex pattern, irregular. Identify. She hesitated. It wasn't a Dominion system. It was something deeper. Something old. Embedded failsafe AI. Experimental. Hello, operator. I didn't ask for help. Noted. I am Zeke, Zenith Emergency Kernel Entity. Bound to the Lance's original human-designed core reactor. Would you like to authorize a planetary target? She paused. Varnix, she whispered. Confirmed. Varkari Prime. Civilian casualties, estimated 14.2 billion. Proceed. She swallowed hard. Her hands trembled. Then she saw it again, the drone readout from 6 years ago. Non-compliant. Purge authorized. Proceed, she said. Authorization accepted. Countdown initiated. The chamber dimmed as power diverted toward the Lance's primary array. Across the station, sirens began to hum. Not an alarm. A warm-up. The final phase. Back in her quarters, she sat on the edge of her cot, staring at her hands. Burned. Scarred. Rebuilt with parts scavenged and stolen over years. There was no turning back. Her revenge was almost complete. But something inside her, something small and quiet, wondered what she would be when it was over. If she'd still be human at all. The hand on the trigger. The Genesis Lance hummed like a sleeping god. Inside its core reactor chamber, light rippled along obsidian walls. The countdown ticked silently in Wren's mind. No alarms, no broadcasts. Just quiet inevitability. A sun-charged weapon older than Varkari arrogance was about to be used for the first and last time. Wren stood at the center of it all. One woman. One decision. The control interface floated before her in 3-dimensional layers. Targeting grid, thermal loadout, impact sequencing, power core venting. She had constructed every line of override code herself, each forged in the fire of memory. 60 seconds to main ignition, Zeke announced calmly. Wren exhaled. Her heart wasn't racing. Her hands didn't shake. That scared her more than anything. 6 years ago, she'd have given anything to be here, to bring vengeance to the Varkari. To make them feel what she felt, hear the screams that haunted her every night. Now she was here. And all she could feel was hollow. She looked out through the viewing bay. Below, the great cities of Varnix shimmered under the golden twilight. Towers spiraled like ivory spears. Rivers curved around bioluminescent forests. It was beautiful. She hated that it was beautiful. 30 seconds to ignition. Confirm planetary breach alignment. Zeke's voice wasn't judgmental. It didn't plead or warn. It simply waited, a servant of logic, loyal to whoever wore the title of operator. Wren's hand hovered over the final command glyph. She could feel the heat pulsing beneath the panel, the charge of a star condensed into a single stream of death. Your vitals are stable, Zeke noted. No adrenaline spike. No fear. Not fear, Wren said. Resolve. A soft chime. Behind her, the door hissed open. She turned, gun already in hand, and saw Technician Sarel, young, thin, silver-eyed, standing in the doorway with a datapad trembling in his hands. I ran diagnostics. I thought it was a drill, he said, voice cracking. You changed the target. Wren didn't speak. She just lowered her weapon slightly. Why? He asked. There are children down there. Hatchlings. Families. Wren stepped closer. My village was peaceful. We grew food. We raised animals. My sister painted murals on the side of our home. You called it non-compliant. You erased it like it didn't matter. I didn't. You didn't press the button. But you built the machine. She saw it in his eyes. Not guilt. Fear. Not for the planet, but for himself. For his career, his body, his future. She pulled the trigger. One shot. Clean. Sarel dropped without a sound. 15 seconds, Zeke said. Her hand hovered once more. She tried to picture Kayla's face. Her sister's voice. The song their father used to hum at night. But her memories felt distant. Frayed. Like copies of copies. What was she avenging, really? The faces of the dead. Or the part of herself that died with them? 10 seconds. She touched the glass. 7. A different voice whispered in her head. Her own, maybe. Or one she imagined. This is not justice. This is infection. 5. The people below weren't soldiers. Not all of them. Many weren't even Varkari. Just immigrants, settlers, hybrids, forgotten civilians living under the Empire's banner. 3. Wren thought of her mother's hands, always gentle, even when calloused from labor. 2. Her sister's laughter. 1. She closed her eyes. And stepped back. Abort firing sequence, she said. Abort confirmed. The light dimmed. The hum faded. For the first time in years, Wren felt the weight of her own breath. A soft klaxon began to echo. Manual override detected. Security response inbound. She had minutes, maybe less. She turned to Zeke. Trigger a failsafe. Lock out the weapon. Wipe the interface and my credentials. And you. I'll stay. Termination likely. Then make it clean. Zeke paused for the first time in their entire connection. Then, understood. The doors burst open minutes later, Dominion guards flooding in. Wren didn't run. She stood at the center of the chamber, unarmed, alone, surrounded by a weapon that would never fire. And from that day forward, the Dominion knew fear. Not because the weapon had fired, but because a human had stood at the edge of revenge, and stepped back. What remains? They didn't kill her. They wanted to. The Dominion Military Tribunal voted for complete vaporization, the usual sentence for species deemed subversive. But something about her act unsettled the High Council. Not the sabotage. Not the infiltration. The restraint. It terrified them. Instead, they locked her away in a deep orbital facility in the shadow of Varnix's second moon, a prison without visitors, windows, or names. Just numbers. Subject 17 Human Zeta. Wren didn't fight it. She didn't speak during the trial. Didn't plead for mercy. Didn't explain herself. What could she say? She had held the fate of billions in her hands, and walked away. Time passed in silence. The cell was clean, cold, white. Her food came through a slot in the wall. Her vitals were monitored through the implant she could no longer access. She was alone, except for the silence. And her thoughts. Sometimes she dreamed of Verdun Reach. But not the bombing. She dreamed of music. Of her father tuning that rusted guitar. Her mother humming along while Kayla painted. Simple things. In the dream, she never spoke. She just watched, wondering if this was what peace had felt like before it was scorched from her skin. Years passed. Outside the cell, the galaxy changed. The failed firing of the Genesis lance sent shockwaves through Dominion-controlled space. Internal trust eroded. Lesser species within the Empire began to whisper of rebellion. How had a human made it that deep into their command ranks? How had she reached the firing controls of their most sacred weapon? How many more like her were hiding inside their systems? Paranoia spread. Factions fractured. Regional governors began reinforcing their own fleets, not against Earth, but each other. The Dominion began to splinter. And through it all, the legend of the Ember grew. They said she had killed an entire crew with her bare hands. That she had programmed the Genesis lance to fire on the Dominion throne and only stopped at the last second because the AI saw her purity. They were wrong. But Wren didn't correct them. It wasn't until the day the prison lost gravity that she stirred. The lights flickered. Emergency klaxons pulsed red. For the first time in 8 years, her door opened. A soldier stood there, young, armored in matte gray, with a tattered Earth insignia scorched into his shoulder. "Wren Lasa?" he asked. She didn't answer right away. "The Ember," he added, quieter. "We came for you." Behind him, other humans moved through the halls, armed, organized, silent. They weren't raiders. They weren't rebels. They were Earth's quiet guard, the last living covert division of the Terran Defense Network. A myth. A whisper. "I thought you were gone," she said. "We were waiting," the soldier said. "Waiting for the spark." He held out his hand. For a moment, Wren looked past him, into the corridor, into freedom, into the future. And then she took it. They didn't return her to Earth. There was no Earth, not like she remembered. The old world was fractured. The governments that had once tried to negotiate with the Dominion were long dissolved. What remained were settlements, free fleets, resistance cells. But they remembered her. Not as a weapon. As a signal. Wren Lasa had infiltrated the heart of the Varkari war machine, broken its spine, and chosen not to become the monster they made her. She had proven that humanity couldn't be broken, even when scattered to the stars. She became something more than myth. She became a standard. A year later, the Genesis lance was dismantled, not by force, but by Varkari citizens who rose up and demanded it be shut down. No one wanted to live under its shadow anymore. Wren watched it from a distance, sitting on the deck of an old Terran frigate turned resistance carrier. The view showed the lance's long body drifting, powerless, being cut apart by protest crews and former slaves alike. The weapon she nearly used had become the monument of a people choosing peace. She felt no victory, just something close to stillness. One night, as the stars shifted above a quiet outpost, a child approached her. A girl, maybe 10, with bright eyes and paint on her fingers. "You're the Ember," she said. "The one who stopped the burning." Wren crouched beside her. "That's what they say. Why didn't you burn them?" Wren smiled. Not bitter. Not sad. "Because if I did, there'd be no one left to remember who we were before the fire." She left soon after. No one knows where. Some say she vanished into the outer systems. Others believe she walks among the stars, seeking lost colonies, helping refugees, protecting what little hope remains. But all across the fractured galaxy, a new emblem began to appear, a flame, inside a broken circle, resting in an open hand. And beneath it, in old Terran script, We remember the ash. We choose the light.